we have a very special welcome. We welcome to our two main speakers for the weekend and for the following weekend, Rachel and Rui. I think they are well known around the traps and we are so happy to have them here with us. Thank you for coming, and we will give all the time over now to Rachel. She will come forward and lead us for tonight, improving immunity. Thank you, Rachel.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just a couple of things before I start. So all of you should probably have a card by now. If you have any questions, just feel free to jot them down. They can be about the presentation or something else related or unrelated. And just hand them back to myself or Rui at the end of the program, and I will answer them tomorrow. So yeah, so feel free to fill those out. Like I said, it can be about the presentation or it can be about something different, and I'll be happy to try and answer those at the next program. So the other thing I just want to note is that I have a website, so you don't have to take photographs, notes, all that sort of thing. So if you go to drrachel.com.au, I've got the address up there, and go to Health Editorials, all the subjects I present, plus many more, will be on the website with all the details under each of those health editorials. So feel free to go and have a look at those. Certainly there's printable formats, those sorts of things you can use. I've sort of set it up so that my patients can access that very readily and to get that information off there. So drrachel.com.au, and all the presentations will be there in a health editorial or written format for you to use. All right, so we're looking at immunity tonight. One of my favourite subjects, something that's a lot that we can do for ourselves in this place. So we'll have a look at some of the things we can do naturally to help boost our immunity. So one of the greatest issues that we have in our health today, currently, is the rise of infectious diseases. Now, we thought we kind of won the war on this battle in the 20th century, and we seem to have done a pretty good job as a society. However, in the last few decades and well into this century, 21st century, the tide of infectious disease is now rising again. In medical terms, we're moving from this age of chronic disease. We're talking about all of those things such as dementia and diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, all those sorts of things. We're now moving into this age of infectious disease. Now, it doesn't mean that we've won the war on chronic disease. Quite the opposite. They're now running concurrently. They're running together. Now, first of all, we're going to do a little epidemiology lesson. What can we to learn about this age of infectious disease? Well, currently, infectious diseases are the #1 killer of children worldwide. Previously unheard of infections are appearing more rapidly than any time in history. We've never had so many new diseases appear in such a short period of time, and that trend is continuing. It's prompted the medical historians to dub this as the era of emerging plagues. Some examples you will have heard of: HIV, MERS, SARS, such as COVID-19, Lyme disease, hantavirus, dengue fever, Ebola, and Zika virus, just to name a few. We're also seeing the re-emergence of diseases we thought we'd almost eradicated. Even diseases such as tuberculosis, that's coming back even into this country, cholera, whooping cough, all of these things are popping up again. And of course, who can forget the superbugs? We're getting increasing numbers of these, infections that have become resistant to all, or at least many of our antibiotics, and we don't have any new ones to treat these. Now, there's a number of reasons why this is actually occurring, and we're seeing this phenomenon. First of all, we have faster and cheaper national and international travel and trade, and this modern transportation and globalization is moving animals, humans, commodities, and all the pathogenic bugs they carry all around the world. That movement of people and the goods is happening at a faster rate and a greater volume than any other time in history. Now, does anyone know what that city is? Anyone recognize it? It's definitely not Sydney. It's Tokyo. So every country on this planet is becoming more and more urbanized. More than 1 billion people live in slums worldwide, and as the global population increases, the cities are becoming more and more obviously populated and crowded, as they are more likely to move into densely populated environments. Now, currently more than half of the world's population are city dwellers. That's about 4.4 billion that we're talking about, or 3 out of every 5 people. That number is expected to double in the next 20 years. 100 years ago, only 1 in 5 were city dwellers, and they had a lot fewer in terms of the population numbers. So slums and high-density cities are the perfect breeding grounds for infectious diseases, and obviously makes it a lot more easy for those pathogens to spread very quickly. Now, it makes a fantastic case for country living, doesn't it? All right, the next one is very much related, but poverty. It remains pervasive around the world, and the current figures, the richest 1% own half the world's wealth. Just the top 81 billionaires have more wealth than the 50% of the world combined. So interestingly, through the pandemic, 2/3 of the wealth gained was funneled straight into that top 1% of the world's richest. So that disparity is continuing to grow between the rich and the poor. The poorest half of the world own less than 0.75% of the world's wealth, so less than 1%. Nearly 10% of the world live in extreme and desperate poverty, but even in the developed world, such as in places like Australia, about 25% are struggling to make ends meet. So impoverished people will have poorer nutrition, poorer access to appropriate medical care, shelter and adequate hygiene, and also a host of other things that makes it more likely for an uncontrolled outbreak of infectious disease to occur. Now here's another one. Worldwide, the agricultural industries have responded to a huge consumer pressure for lots of meat in all its forms, dairy and eggs. There is mass crowding, stressed and immune deficient animals which often fill with growth-promoting antibiotics and fed all sorts of waste products. More than 2/3 of the 70 billion animals slaughtered each year are farmed in factories with the most deplorable conditions of mass crowding, poor hygiene and cruel treatment of the animals. These have become absolute reservoirs for viruses and other pathogens to breed and rapidly mutate before passing on to humans. So bearing in mind, most, if not all, distinctive infectious diseases of civilization have been transferred to humans from animals. And all the medical experts are predicting that this will be the most likely cause of a devastating pandemic at some point in the very near future. Very much linked to that is deforestation. Mass deforestation we're talking about here. So in addition to all the devastating effects that this has on nature, it's also bringing us and farm animals into close contact with displaced wildlife and, of course, the pathogens that they carry. And these lead to deadly diseases in humans and animals. An example of how this actually happened only a couple of decades ago, they cleared 10 million acres of forest in Borneo and Sumatra. They were burnt. There was mass migration of the bats, some of which nested in some mango trees that were overlying a Malaysian mass pig farm. The bats dropped their urine and pieces of fruit with their saliva into the pig pens, which contained a virus that was benign to the bats but deadly to the pigs. In turn, those sick pigs infected other farm animals and people as well with the devastating virus, and it was called the Nipah virus. Then there was a transport of the pigs to other parts of the country. The virus started to spread. However, it was rapidly recognised by authorities, and within 7 months there was a mass slaughter of the pigs, and they were able to halt the virus in its track at that time. However, the frightening part of that story is that the Nipah virus for a human had a 40% death rate. So 2 out of every 5 humans who got it died from the disease. So you could see how easy in this day and age that this could quickly spread around the world with that sort of easy transportation. Now finally, obviously, often not recognised, chronic diseases frequently found in a large portion of the Western world means that our immune systems and many of these immune systems of many of these individuals are suboptimal and make it much more prone to becoming ill and spread infectious disease. So it's also an ongoing cause of issues with our immune system. Now, it's been a few years since we've had to worry too much about this. I'm talking about the challenges not just with our health, obviously, but also economically and socially with the pandemic. The question that's being asked, though, is will this sort of thing happen again? And if so, if it will be more deadly. Certainly that is the prediction that it's going to happen again, and it will be something far more deadly. They're thinking likely to be some sort of influenza coming from the animal world. So, we've all heard of plagues of biblical proportions. Students of the Bible are very aware of some prophecies from the Bible that give us some insight into what is actually happening. So in the book of Luke, we find this amazing prophetic look at what this planet Earth will be experiencing in the time before Jesus returns. So if we go to Luke 21, verses 10 and 11, Jesus was asked what signs we should look to herald his second coming was near. Now Jesus replied to the question with this prophecy: nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences. And there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. So we are seeing all of these happening on a much more rapid basis these days. But in the midst of that prediction, highlighted in red there, we see that word pestilence. And that is another word for infectious diseases. So we can expect that from a biblical standpoint, that we should be concerned about this at this time in history. So the next question is, if we can predict there'll be more infectious diseases to worry about, what are we going to do? The answer is, first and foremost, we need to boost the immune system. So if your body is in its prime state without inflammation and oxidative stress, your immune system will be able to fight and win a war against most diseases that will attack your immune system, and of course many of the different kinds of infections. So we're going to look at some ways that we can do this naturally and simply to maximize your immune health. And finally, just be prepared, but don't be alarmed. We know that we are going to expect this, so let's do what we can in our homes and workplaces. Now, great place to start, always, we need to look at the lifestyle measures. What can we change, what we're doing with our lifestyles? And we're going to actually begin with exercise. Probably one of the most difficult things for most of us to maintain, but the research shows us you can halve your risk of developing those colds and flus by doing regular, moderate exercise. It's been shown to really impact that oxidative stress in your body and boost many of the innate or those inbuilt immune factors, making it 5 times stronger or 500% better at fighting infections. It improves your ability to sleep and lowers your stress levels, which obviously is implicated in your immune function. And how much is enough? It's never complicated when it comes to exercise. Half an hour a day of something that will make you huff and puff. A brisk walk is sufficient to get that immune boost that you need. Now, you might like to try walking in the bush. Now, there's a very fancy term that we give for this, and that's forest bathing. But in Australia, we like our bushwalking, so I'll stick to that terminology. Now, research has shown that just walking in a forest with trees that release aromatic compounds can boost a whole variety of immune factors. And they found this out by doing a very interesting study in Japan. And they took a whole group of very stressed businessmen and they sent them off to a forest for the weekend or for the week. And they were just to walk amongst the trees. It wasn't particularly huff and puff type exercise, it literally just was a stroll in amongst these trees. And they did a blood test before and after they did this. So before they checked all their immune factors, and then they came back after they had done this and they rechecked the immune factors. And they had a fantastic boost to their immune system across a whole host of different types of cells. And they thought, that's really good. If we can get people to relax, we can boost their immune system. It's a wonderful way to actually help us to do something naturally. So they thought they'd retest the hypothesis. They took another group of very stressed Japanese businessmen and they sent them off to a day spa or, somewhere where you can just sit there and have some massages, sit by a pool, have a bit of a swim, watch a few nice things, but it wasn't out in nature. It was just one of those nice sort of resort type dwellings. So they measured their bloods before and after, and what do you think they found? Not much benefit at all. There was very little change in their immune system by doing that type of relaxation. So they thought, well, maybe there's something in the forest that was boosting their immune system. So the very clever scientists went back to the forest and they measured the compounds in the air. They measured what was all these things in the air that may have been giving them an immune boost. And we would call these the essential oils that were being released by the trees, the aromatic compounds. And then what they did, they took that set of data and they created an essential oil blend. They took the few different types of trees and their types of oils and made an essential oil blend. And then they tested this hypothesis a third time. But this time, instead of going to the Japanese stressed businessmen, they went to get some very stressed medical students. I can certainly understand why they would have done that. Now, these medical students were not to relax. They were to go and do their shifts all day, but at night they were to diffuse these essential oils through a diffuser in their rooms overnight. The most amazing thing happened. They measured before and after, and they saw the same response, a big boost to their immune system. So what were the oils that they found helpful? And there's your list. It's eucalyptus, cypress, pine, and fir. Now, we live in a country that is full of eucalyptus. The other beauty about this is they found that you only had to do this once a week to get the benefit. So you know how you had to do a brisk walk for half an hour every day? Try and do one of those at least amongst some gum trees. And so you're going to get the added benefit of those aromatic compounds, breathing those in to boost your immune system, as well as the half an hour of something that makes you huff and puff to also boost your immune system. So it's a nice way to combine those two factors together. Let's talk about nutrition. There is a gold standard diet when it comes to boosting your immune system. It's called the whole food plant-based diet. So that's just all your fruits and vegetables and your nuts, your seeds, your grains, your legumes, all of these things in their least processed form. So nice and fresh, you certainly can cook them, that's not an issue, but as fresh as possible and the least processed form of all your plant foods. But research has shown that just increasing your fruit and vegetable intake has a significant benefit on the immune system. There's also a very strong link between low-fat diets, remembering that the whole food plant-based diet is actually naturally low in fat. But low-fat diets do enhance the immune response. Conversely, diets that are high in animal products and saturated fats from animals and processed foods are pro-inflammatory and they depress the immune system. Now, there's some very amazing nutrients found in this whole food plant-based diet, and we're going to have a look at some of those nutrients, bearing in mind it's better to have them in their whole form than rather as a supplement. But certainly supplements can help, they're just not as good as having it from the plant itself. So the first one is vitamin C, a very powerful antioxidant, very well known for supporting the immune system, plays a significant role in both preventing and treating lots of those respiratory tract infections, colds and flus, etc. Now, there are some wonderful natural sources that we can get here. The Kakadu plum is actually one of our superfoods for vitamin C here in Australia. It has 10 times more vitamin C than an orange. Just one of these plums gives you more than 5 times the daily recommended intake of vitamin C. But we've also got the guavas, your yellow capsicums, all of your citrus, black currants and strawberries, and your leafy greens. They're all fantastic sources. There's no consensus when it comes to supplementation. Certainly there's no harm in doing about 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams for short periods of time to help fight those infections. But honestly, your diet can more than adequately provide for you. Then we've got N-acetylcysteine. This is an antioxidant compound known for some very powerful benefits, particularly with regard to influenza. It doesn't prevent you from getting the infection, but it does show that it will reduce the development of symptoms if you are having that in your diet or if you're taking a supplement. Now, its natural form is found as cysteine, which you can get from all of your legumes and sunflower seeds very easily. If you're going to actually supplement, it's about 600 milligrams twice a day during the winter months. Just a word on supplements. If you're going to supplement, you have to be careful that you don't do it if you have lots of allergies, eczema, hay fever, asthma, those sorts of things. It can actually tend to make those things worse. and also if you've got any stomach ulcers as well. It certainly can flare those up. So it's not the safest of supplements, and it's certainly something you can get quite readily in those foods, in your legumes and sunflower seeds. Now, zinc also plays a very important role in our immune system. We know that if you've got high levels of zinc inside your cells, it will decrease the replication of many of the viruses. Now, healthy zinc-containing foods include all of your whole grains, oats in particular, but legumes and beans, cashews and almonds are fantastic sources of zinc. Again, be very careful with supplementation. You don't want to use more than about 40 milligrams a day if you decide to use it, as it will interfere with the absorption of other nutrients such as copper. So I would actually recommend, when it comes to zinc, unless you've got a zinc deficiency that's been diagnosed, it's probably best to keep the supplementation just at times that you need it, such as when you're coming down with a cold or a flu. You can actually push it up temporarily to about 200 milligrams at those times, but only for about a week or two at the most. Then we have quercetin. This has been implicated in a whole lot of things, a lot of benefits here in terms of antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, even anti-cancer potential, but certainly has some antiviral properties. And how it does this, it actually binds the zinc and pulls it into the cell. It's called a zinc ionophore. So it binds it, pulls it in, and that inrush of zinc into the cell causes obviously the viruses to stop replicating. Very easily found again, red onions, carob, cranberries, red delicious apples, watercress and asparagus are good examples. If you're going to supplement, the dose is 500 milligrams twice a day. Now, selenium is another mineral that's front and center in terms of strengthening the immunity, particularly in reducing that oxidative stress and preventing viral infections. Now, it's found naturally in very, very high doses in Brazil nuts. So your dose would be 2 to 4 Brazil nuts each day. I never recommend supplementation of this particularly because you can get selenium toxicity with supplementation. So you're better off just using your Brazil nuts at 2 to 4 each day. Now, magnesium, another one that has multiple benefits to your health, but in terms of the immune system, it does help to reduce your susceptibility to viruses. Very, very easy to get. All of your natural sources there on the screen, your leafy greens, your nuts, seeds, legumes and whole grains. Now, always important to keep an eye on the weight when it comes to managing your immune system. Obviously, exercise and diet are at the top of the list for that. But being overweight and obese has a significant adverse effect on the function of the immune system. That's because it causes a state of low-grade chronic inflammation. So being a healthy weight will obviously decrease that inflammation. It will significantly improve the function of many different aspects of the immune system. You'll have fewer infections and less severe symptoms when you do become ill. And successfully managing your weight also reduces the risk of a whole host of those chronic diseases which have been associated with higher severity of disease and death rates when you get these infections. So we've looked at all the important measures to include. We need to avoid some things, and here's a couple of things we need to avoid: alcohol and smoking. So drinking alcohol every day or most days will suppress and weaken your immune system. Those who consume alcohol are much more likely to catch colds, flus, and other viral or bacterial illnesses than those who don't drink. And the symptoms of the infections will also last longer and become more severe and intense when you're a drinker. We all know that smoking causes obviously severe lung damage and heart disease and a whole host of cancers. But it also has profoundly bad effects on the immune system. There are so many different immune suppressing chemicals, including nicotine, found in cigarettes. So all these cause smokers to be far more susceptible to both infections and also autoimmune disease. Now, in the event that you get an infection, fever is actually your friend. Fever is there to enhance that innate or that inbuilt immunity. It mobilizes many factors in the immune system to help fight the infection far more efficiently. We know that an elevated body temperature has been shown to directly inhibit viral replication, particularly the influenza viruses. The thermal effect of the fever on the body is associated with better survival rates and shorter duration of disease, caused by the infection. Generally speaking, there is actually no need to resort to paracetamol or ibuprofen unless the temperature is reaching 40 degrees Celsius or there's some sort of significant pain that is stopping you from getting adequate rest. Let's drink water. Now, 8 glasses a day is a recommended amount, but research has shown that those who only drink 2 to 3 glasses of water increase their chances of getting colds and flus by 4 to 5 times. That's 400 to 500% more chance of getting colds and flus. We know that viruses like dehydrated bodies, so we do need to stay well hydrated. Let's talk a little bit about sleep. We know that a good night's sleep of about 7 to 8 hours for most adults is the helpful range. Studies have shown that individuals who have been inoculated in the nose with the common cold are less likely to develop symptoms if they've had 7 or more hours of sleep when compared to those who had less than 7 hours. The best hours are actually those before midnight, earlier in the night. This is when more of the slow wave sleep is actually occurring with more immune enhancing benefits. And sunlight. Vitamin D that we receive naturally from the sunlight plays a critical role in preventing respiratory tract infections, reducing the use of antibiotics, enhancing the immune system's response to infections, and the best way, of course, is through the sun. That's where we get our vitamin D. It's even more powerful than vitamin C for us. And there is your recipe for how much sunlight you need. As everyone has a different skin colour, everyone needs a slightly different amount. But essentially, it's a quarter of the time in the sun that would take for you to get sunburnt. So if you know your time for you to go a bit pink in the sun, just obviously divide that by 4 and you'll get that number. In summer, of course, we want to avoid that 11 till 3 hours, just so that you can avoid that skin cancer risk. Don't forget good ventilation, absolutely important. So as you increase air exchange through ventilation, the infection rate and severity across individuals will decrease. In the 1918 influenza pandemic, there was a tent hospital that they set up because there was no room left in the main hospitals that had lots of accidental ventilation and therefore much better outcomes and survival rates than the crowded and poorly ventilated nearby hospitals in the city of Boston. Now, ventilation is particularly important in your own home, perhaps even more important than sanitizing all those surfaces. Make sure you've got really good air exchange through your house. Open up your windows, allow that fresh air in, even in winter, and help prevent the spread of those viruses from airborne particles. Another way to get really good ventilation is to breathe through your nose. It's much better at humidifying the air that goes into your lung, and viruses, generally speaking, do not like this humidity. Now, we had this drummed into us, absolutely, didn't we? Every sign, everywhere we went, telling us about good hygiene. But it was for good reason, despite the fact that many viruses and infectious diseases are spread via the air. About 80% are also transmitted by touch. Now, very few can get through the skin, so it's important to avoid touching the places where it can get into your body. So we're talking the nose, the eyes, and the mouth, particularly when you're in public places. And just finally, make sure you sanitize your hands regularly when you're out in public. Always an important part of a health program, no matter what it is, you need to manage the stress. Stress and immune function with excessive prolonged stress severely impairs your immunity. Now, it's a whole talk in itself. I won't be addressing it today, but it's certainly an important part of immune boosting. Now, we know that we can get the heat to enhance the innate immune response. So there's some ways that we can do this and help this along, even when we don't have a fever. And that is by using hydrotherapy, water therapy. Research has shown that even healthy individuals taking thermal baths between 38 and 39 degrees Celsius were able to significantly stimulate a whole variety of immune cells and other factors. Interestingly, if this was followed by a very short exposure to cold, it gave it a further boost. So how can you implement this at home? Well, it's with a contrast shower. You start with 5 minutes on the hottest setting that you can get without burning yourself, then 1 minute cold, then 3 minutes hot, 1 minute cold, and do that again, so that last bit twice. And you want to try and do that at least 2 to 3 times a week, but always remember to end on the cold for this, and then of course you can jump out of the shower and rest for a little bit. Now this is not advisable if you're particularly frail or have any heart rhythm issues. You can certainly then use this method, but for a foot bath instead. So you can do the hot and cold, 5 minutes hot, 1 minute cold, 3 minutes hot, 1 minute cold, 3 minutes hot, 1 minute cold, but through a foot bath of hot and cold. Now this is my favourite form of hydrotherapy. It's a good way to get some of that heat to stimulate your immune system, but also the Epsom salts are a wonderful way to get some magnesium through your skin to not only help your immune system, but also those aches and pains that can come on with those viruses and other illnesses. Now let's take a look at some of those herbs. There are certainly some wonderful herbs that can enhance our immune system to help combat those infections. The first one, my favourite at the top of the list here, is the astragalus root. Now it's a really deep immune stimulator. It's a major leader in terms of the immune herbs. It stimulates a whole variety of different factors. For those who are a bit more scientific, we're talking here the white blood cells, phagocytes, macrophages, IgG and IgM antibodies, and it also enhances natural killer cell activity. It can be used in the treatments of colds and flus, but it does play a more important role in prevention of these for those who are particularly susceptible. So it reduces the frequency and severity of the viruses. It's also been used in some parts of the world as an aid to cancer treatments alongside mainstream medicine. And the dose is 2 to 6 grams of the dried root each day. We've also got the andrographis, and here this is another deep immune stimulator. It's very similar in some ways to the astragalus, and it particularly targets the lymphocytes, the natural killer cells, and phagocyte activity. It's shown some very broad spectrum antiviral activity against influenza, hepatitis, cold sore viruses, wart viruses, HIV, and even COVID-19. You would use the above ground parts or the aerial parts of this plant at a dose of 2 to 6 grams each day, and this is definitely one that you need to avoid in pregnancy. It's not safe. Then we've got the elderflower coming from the elderberry plant. Of course, we don't eat the berries. They can cause some quite severe nausea and other gut issues, and may even be toxic if you have too many. But this one's been shown to directly inhibit the virus's entry and replication in the immune system. So it also enhances the efficiency of the immune response to the virus. It helps to reduce congestion and coughs in respiratory tract infections. It makes a wonderful throat gargle, so you make it up into a tea and then cool it and make a throat gargle for both pharyngitis and tonsillitis. And the dose there is 1 to 3 grams of the dried flowers daily. Echinacea root, very, very extensively studied, but its most important action is to stimulate the innate immune system in a number of ways, but it does act in a more superficial way compared to the astragalus. But it does work a little bit more quickly. It's very useful in colds and flus on a whole variety of different respiratory tract infections, tonsillitis, pharyngitis, both as treatment and prevention. It's also got some use in skin infections such as abscesses and boils, and the dose is 1 to 3 grams of the dried roots daily. And we've got the good old-fashioned garlic, an often age-old favourite, has some wonderful healing properties. It's a very potent antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, and it also has some anti-parasite functions, but it has no harmful effect on the beneficial bacteria in your gut. Now, it's most frequently used to treat colds, flus, bronchitis, and nasal congestion when it comes to the immune system. We also know that a diet rich in garlic reduces your risk of cancer. And it tends to lose most of its benefits, however, if we crush it or heat it. So in terms of using it medicinally, the best way is to either get it freeze-dried or at least dried below 65 degrees Celsius and having about 2 to 4 grams of the dried garlic each day. Obviously, if you're not going around anyone and you're having socially free periods of time, you feel free to chew on a piece of garlic or the cloves of the garlic themselves. It's a bit tough to take, I think, doing it that way. Dry garlic is a better option. Then there's thyme, another garden favourite. Now, it's a great antiseptic. It's got at least 20 different antiviral compounds in it. It has antibacterial and antifungal properties. I find this even better than tea tree when it comes to antifungal properties. It's very useful in the respiratory tract infections such as colds, flus, bronchitis and congestion in the respiratory tract. Another great one to use as a throat gargle. Now, it's particularly useful when there's a lot of coughing involved. It's fantastic for that, and that's one way. If you use the throat gargle, it will help with that cough. It's also great for gum infections too, that one. The dose is 2 to 3 grams per day of the dried leaf. Just a word of warning, don't ever ingest thyme oil. Very toxic. Even just 1 ml is lethal to human beings. And probably animals, but not that I would think you would use that on animals. Alright, then we've got the nigella seed. There's got some very good research behind this. They are antiviral and anti-inflammatory. They help the immune response to COVID-19 in particular, and also for the lung healing afterwards as well. The dose is 500 milligrams of the seed oil twice a day. Now, as a physician, I'd be rather remiss if I didn't include the most important but often neglected aspect of your health, spirituality. God is the greatest of all physicians, and as our Creator, there is nothing in our physiology that He does not understand or know how to heal. So, having an active spiritual life in the research has been shown to actually boost your immune system. Therefore, I prescribe some reading of the Bible every day and praying with your Creator and Restorer of your health every day. Now, the final point to consider is making some practical preparations here. If you're going to think about what's coming upon the world in terms of infectious disease, we do need some things to get ready. Now, there's all sorts of things out there in terms of what to have in your household. I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about what you can put in your natural medicine cabinet here. All the other stuff, you can find all that stuff online. I'm going to just give you a list of things to have in your natural medicine cabinet to help you at times where we might have some sort of nasty pandemic. So here's your natural first aid kit. Always have something like some Hydrolyte, either in liquid, ice block or dissolvable tablet form. That certainly can help at times when you get vomiting and diarrhea. Always have some vitamin C tablets or powder and some zinc to give that immune system a boost. Don't forget your herbs, your garlic, thyme and echinacea and elderflower. All of those are very, very easy to actually grow. Another one is white willow bark. This one obviously is from a tree, so you can't grow it, but I do recommend, it's getting harder and harder to get, that you get yourself a good amount of white willow bark in powdered form. Now, white willow bark is great as a tea when you've got fever and pain. It's like a natural aspirin. In fact, we used to derive aspirin from white willow bark, only unlike aspirin, it doesn't have any harmful effects on the gut. The only thing I will say is those who've got salicylate allergies and children under the age of 12 cannot use this. So it's for adults only for this one and for those who don't have a salicylate allergy. Another one that you should always have in your medicine cabinet is some marshmallow root. Now, I didn't talk about this one again, but marshmallow root or slippery elm powder, they're almost identical in their benefits, but it's a fantastic soother to the gut after you've had an infection. So it's a nice, wonderful one after you've got over the worst of it to have some marshmallow root to calm that gut down. And don't forget the eucalyptus essential oil. It's a great one to diffuse into your house throughout the winter months. And something very simple that I do whenever I've been at the surgery and I've been obviously around patients who are, I've got every type of virus coming through, and I think over the last year or so there's been at least 18 different ones I'm constantly exposed to. That night I will literally just put a little bit of eucalyptus, so just sprinkle a bit of eucalyptus on a little towel, a little washer, and I just put that on my pillow beside my head. And so I don't even put it on myself, I don't even worry about diffusing, I just put it there and I breathe that through the night to just give myself an immune boost. So it's a really simple way, but always have a good supply of 100% eucalyptus essential oil. And of course, don't forget your Epsom salts for those baths. So that's just a really simple, nice, natural medicine cabinet that you can have. One other thing I will say is try to get all of your products from really good Australian companies. The reason is anything coming in from overseas, even from the Western countries, has been highly adulterated. In Australia, we're extremely highly regulated. We have to put into our products what we say we do. We cannot in any way, shape or form adulterate the products that we're selling here. So that's one of the benefits of having such a tightly regulated country. You will know that you're going to get the product that you pay for. So here's the final summary for you. Make sure you get your daily dose of exercise, something like half an hour per day. Try to get at least one of those in the bush where there's eucalyptus trees. Don't forget your healthy whole food plant-based diet with lots of those immune boosting properties. Keep an eye on your weight. Drink plenty of fresh water. Try to get those 8 glasses in. Get a good night's rest, going to bed as early as possible, and try and get at least 7 to 8 hours. Get your daily dose of sunlight. Keep your home and workplace well ventilated. Practice good hygiene methods, especially in public venues. Manage your stress. Include hydrotherapy contrast showers each week and Epsom salt baths, of course, for those aches and pains. Try to grow some garlic, thyme, elderflowers and echinacea. Obviously foster your spirituality and include God in your health plan. And don't forget those practical preparations. Make sure you build up that natural first aid kit at home. Thank you very much. And don't forget your cards, people.
Thank you, Rach.
No worries.
I can listen to you all night.
Oh, you would want to do that.
There again, there's so much to learn. And so many of the things are simple.